In his book Digital Minimalism, Cal Newport makes the case for being more intentional about the technologies that you allow into your life. In this video, I'd like to sketch out some of my favorite ideas from that book, and then share how I'm applying them both in my personal and professional life. The book is broken down into two sections. First, foundations, and then practices. On the foundational side, Newport outlines how technology is not neutral. In particular, the software that we use has been carefully engineered to create behavioral addictions that lead to more eyeballs on the screen, and therefore more money in the pockets of big tech companies. As users, what this can feel like every time we whip out our phone and refresh whatever social media app you visit most often, the reason that's so enticing is that we're gambling for likes. We want to see the reactions to our most recent post. And while there might be the slightest dopamine hit when we do see those likes or positive comments, it's a pretty dangerous game that we're playing with our overall emotional well-being. Because no matter how many likes we get or how many positive comments there are, that good feeling never really rises up to the bar that we'd like it to. And it's also quite fleeting, disappearing within minutes, causing you to want to check it again, hoping that new likes have rolled in. This relationship to technology is not healthy, which is what prompted Newport to explore how to combat it. And what he came up with was a philosophy of digital minimalism, which he describes as a philosophy of technology use in which you focus your online time on a small number of carefully selected and optimized activities that strongly support things you value, and then happily miss out on everything else. He contrasts this minimalist approach to a maximalist approach. On that maximalist side, the approach is to adopt any new technology so long as it provides even a tiny benefit to your life. The problem with that, as Newport points out, is that if we only look at the benefits, we might be neglecting the significant cost that comes along with the adoption of that particular technology. So instead of that approach of any potential benefit being enough, Newport proposes the minimalist approach, where you recognize that life is short. You only have so much time and attention, and therefore any amount of clutter in your life is very costly. Here he quotes Thoreau, who said that the cost of a thing is the amount of what I will call life is required to be exchanged for it, immediately or in the long run. So how much life are you giving up in order to reap the particular benefit of any given technology? Another important component of this minimalist approach is optimization. So it's not just if you'll use a particular technology, but also how you'll use it. So take Netflix, for example. It's not just a matter of whether you watch Netflix or you don't. If you choose to bring Netflix into your life, you might add the optimization of not ever watching Netflix alone. So you still get to enjoy your favorite shows, but only with other people. That removes the temptation entirely of binging a whole series completely on your own and then regretting it later. And then a third important piece to this minimalist philosophy is the fact that intentionality is satisfying. It feels good to move in the direction of your values, as opposed to always just falling back on convenience. And to get a taste for what the life of a digital minimalist would feel like, Newport encourages you to take on a digital declutter, a 30-day break from optional technologies. Before you do that, though, it's important to plan out replacements. Decide what you will do instead of scrolling Instagram for 45 minutes every day, or instead of watching Netflix for 2 hours every night. And that's where the practices come in. The first practice that Newport describes is in response to one particular effect of heavy social media use, and that's solitude deprivation. Because of all of the ways that we can connect with other people on our phone, a device that you always have with you, that creates the condition where it's entirely possible to completely banish solitude from your life. And it's that deprivation of solitude that contributes to the sharp rise in anxiety and depression that we've seen. The countermeasure to that solitude deprivation is pretty straightforward. Spend time alone. Newport encourages you to take long walks, not with your phone out, not with your headphones on, listening to a new podcast, but simply being with your own thoughts. Because solitude is this state where your mind is free from input of other minds, which is quite refreshing these days. You can use that time to think through a professional problem, maybe do some self-reflection on a particular aspect of your life, or do what Newport calls gratitude walks. Just enjoying nice weather and whatever scenery surrounds you. And paradoxically, that solitude is likely to make you appreciate human connection when you get back to it. but the type of connection that you get back to is actually pretty important. In fact, Newport makes a distinction between connection, the ability to see what someone else has posted and react to those posts, and conversation, real-time, face-to-face, hearing someone else's voice. The connection that occurs through social media doesn't actually do much to maintain a relationship because of how low bandwidth it is, compared to real conversations where you're drawing from facial expressions and tone of voice. That's high bandwidth communication that actually does count toward maintaining a relationship. So in that way, social media is kind of the worst of both worlds. You create this state of solitude deprivation, while at the same time connecting with others in a way that doesn't actually support any relationships, not in a meaningful way. So one practice that Newport encourages is to hold conversation office hours. Identify a recurring space in your schedule to chat with other people. If you've got a long commute home, let your friends know that that's a good time to give you a call, or initiate those calls yourself. Or maybe spend an evening or a weekend morning always at a particular coffee shop and reach out to friends, encouraging them to join you there. And finally, the last push that Newport makes is an encouragement to seek out high-quality leisure, maybe by identifying a specific craft that you'd like to get good at, even and especially when that's a demanding activity. And in fact, there's the encouragement here to prioritize those demanding activities over passive consumption, because that energy you expend on high-quality leisure can actually energize you even more. So whether that's taking up woodworking or becoming handy around the house or taking up weaving, find a craft that allows you to make something in the physical world. And then another category of high quality leisure is what Newport calls supercharged socializing. This could be something like gathering friends together for a card or board game, or even joining a recreational sports league. The key here for this supercharged socializing is to seek out activities that require real-world, structured social interactions. It's the structure of a board game or a particular sport that takes pressure off of how you will socialize and makes it easier to enjoy the time you spend with other people. So with that as an overview of some of the key ideas, let me next share with you how I've been applying them to my life. Here's a quick sketch that I made for myself when I was deciding what I wanted my digital declutter to look like, with the idea of the declutter not being a thing that you only do for 30 days, but rather this experiment that you take on to decide what you want to carry with you after those 30 days. I'll point out two of the most impactful pieces of my plan. One was taking on that example that I already shared of not watching Netflix alone. And specifically, my wife and I have identified just 2 evenings each week that we'll watch Netflix or any other streaming service. That's what Friday and Saturday nights are for, unless we're doing some other social activity, which, with a couple of babies in the house, doesn't happen all that often these days. Instead of defaulting to watching Netflix after dinner every night, we now have a game night set aside on Tuesdays, and then the other nights of the week we spend reading, which is related to the other most impactful part of my plan here, totally removing YouTube, podcast, and Twitter consumption from my life. Even though I've been off of social media for a while, I still had the tendency to check a couple of Twitter accounts regularly, and then was a very frequent viewer of YouTube and often listened to podcasts. And while those aren't inherently bad sources of media, I've found that I enjoy the process of reading books so much more, specifically physical books, that I can mark up while reading, like I did with Digital Minimalism that supported the creation of that visual summary that I just shared. So rather than filling any little bit of downtime by watching a YouTube video or listening to a bit of a podcast, I've always got a few books on hand that I can pick up and continue reading. And what I've noticed is how good I feel after spending even just 20 minutes reading a book, compared to how I would often feel after watching 20 minutes of YouTube or listening to a bit of a podcast or browsing Twitter. Those activities often either raised my anxiety level or brought up unhealthy comparisons or reminded me of a bunch of things that I feel like I should be doing that I'm not. The experience of reading a physical book and the pace of that media consumption hits a sweet spot for me. And I'm now long past the 30 days of dedicated digital declutter, and I have no desire to look back. So I hope these examples here show you how you might implement some of the core principles of digital minimalism. There are plenty of other examples that you will find within the book, along with a bunch of practices that I didn't have time to mention here, but I hope that you enjoyed this visual summary. If you like how I've sketched out these ideas and want to develop this skill yourself, that's precisely what I teach inside of Verbal to Visual. That's a course and community platform that I run where we focus on the skill of sketchnoting. So if you'd like to explore that skill and maybe create your own visual summaries of the books you're reading or the podcasts you're listening to, then come join us over at verbaltovisual.com. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck incorporating some of this digital minimalism into your life, and I look forward to sharing more ideas with you next time. Till then.